If you've ever wondered if you have a tendency to sabotage your own money, well, the answer is probably yes. Because most of us have at least one or two bits of financial baggage that we picked up all the way back in childhood, and they are not helping us at all. So welcome to Making Sense. It's the podcast for people who want financial freedom without giving up their coffee. I'm Frances Cook, a financial journalist and fellow financial freedom seeker who makes money simple for you. And this one might be simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy to address because there are all sorts of fun ways we can trip ourselves up. Compulsive buying, where you buy things you don't need just for that little hit of dopamine. Financial enabling, where you want to help other people who you love very much, but actually you're making it worse. Plain old fear, where you're scared things can always get worse, so you don't do what's needed to get yourself into a better situation, even if it's something relatively common, like asking for a pay rise. Or there are lots of different options for us to sabotage ourselves. The key is figuring out what we're doing and then how to do better with it. So let's.
Making Sense is on a mission to make money simple, and I just couldn't do that without the support of KiwiBank. It's really important to me to only work with companies that understand that mission. And for KiwiBank, their purpose is to help Kiwi and Aotearoa be better off. So bringing you real stories of different approaches to finance is one of the ways they're making a difference to the lives of their customers. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwi.
And I'm joined now by Nick Alcock, tax debt coach and chartered accountant. Now, you use financial therapy techniques in your work, which is quite unusual in New Zealand. So how did you first get into this area? Was it one of those things where you were working with people and realizing, the numbers are one thing, but the behavior and psychology are also causing problems? Or is it something else? What sparked you to be wanting to use financial therapy in an area that is often so numbers focused?
The reason why I was getting into financial therapy was kind of a number of things. First of all, had always had an interest in personal finance myself anyway. I was also, conscious of the fact that AI is actually changing the way we do things in the accountancy profession. Plus also I'd just done a financial hardship application for a client with a place I was working for at the time. And I managed to save the client $65,000 in tax arrears. So then I got into financial therapy and discovered that, some of the skills and techniques they were teaching me were useful to the clients I was working on. And then I did a second application for another client and saved him $25,000.
Wow. Okay. Just enough very first introduction. I have so many follow-up questions. I'm going to start with what you mentioned there about AI, because that is massive. People talk to me about that all the time. What are you seeing change with AI becoming more and more prevalent?
I'm expecting that all the sort of the basic accounting functions that you normally do is probably going to be overtaken by AI. So, and people are starting to rely on AI a lot more. I'm using even AI for tax myself.
Do you have, where do you sort of land on how useful that is? Because I see some things that people are using AI for that I think are incredible. I mean, it can be an amazing tool for digging out information, for helping you process things. I also see some people putting their budget or their goals into AI and getting some plans or feedback back that is sometimes a little worrying. And sometimes I look at it and go, oh, I'm not sure if the machine is spitting something out there that's good, So where do you land on all of that?
If I use AI, I'm kind of checking with how it calculates things. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it reasonable? You do have to take some kind of reasonable test with it all, not just rely on AI, being correct. I can see some positive aspects of using AI, but it depends on, as you said, how you're using it for and be not relying on it totally.
Yeah. You mentioned as well about some clients that you have worked with and just very casually tossed out some big numbers that you have helped them save. So what was it? Saved one person $65,000, saved another person $25,000. And that's when you were working with them on dealing with some pretty big tax debts. I mean, that's a huge amount to save people. What are the sort of places that you've found some of those savings as you go through and work with people?
Okay, these were cases where the IRD were actually wrote off the tax arrears under hardship grounds. So that's something that I kind of specialize in helping clients with. So you might get someone who, who is in business and has tax arrears and can't afford to pay their future tax obligations as well as their previous tax obligations. And then perhaps I look at either getting them on a payment arrangement with IRD, or in some cases try to get some of the tax debt written off because they can't afford to pay both.
So, when you're working with these clients, and some of them have, as you've pointed out, dealt with some really tricky situations, and you are applying financial therapy techniques, is there something you come across all the time, a really common money belief or money behavior that a lot of people need help with?
Yeah, okay. So it really depends on the situation. So you could get a range of different. For example, I'll use financial therapy to look at someone's money beliefs and their behaviors and see whether that's impacting on their tax debt situation or not. And also there's other come into a lot of other range of factors as well. So you've got to also remember that it's not just the individual person's behaviors or beliefs that they may have, but it's also you got to think about the actual family system and how someone in a relationship with might be impacting their beliefs or behaviors as well.
Yeah.
So had a situation, for example, with a client where they were basically what I call psychologically stuck. The person had 5 years of tax returns that were not filed. The wife had tax returns that were incorrect, filed by the previous accountant, because they had basically, residential rental property. They hadn't declared the income with ID, and there was family pressure not to disclose that. It's only because the external environment changed were they able to feel unstuck.
Interesting. So, one of the things that gets people so stuck is their relationship with other people and how they impact how they would handle their money.
Yeah, correct. Or something happens to them. If I recognize that they're stuck, then obviously you've got to work out how you can help them and they can see probably a solution to their problems. Because what's actually happening is I use what we call a psychological stages of change model to work out where the client is in terms of changing their behaviors. So try to determine if they're ready to change or not. I might look for signs of change, because if they're not ready to change, then they're not ready to change their behaviors. And if you just repeatedly ask them for information, they're just going to ignore you or just get annoyed.
Yeah.
And this is where traditional accountants are just going to just get it wrong because they don't understand someone's going through a stage of change process.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, where do you start those conversations with people then? So, if you're having a conversation with someone and you're trying to work out some of their money beliefs, and then you're also trying to work out, okay, here are some difficult ones, and are they ready to change? What sorts of things are you talking to them about and asking them about there?
When they come to me, I've got to act in a different way than most accountants. So I've got to be someone who is trying to encouraging change. So that means I've got to use different language. I've got to communicate differently to someone. I'm really more listening rather than talking to them. Yeah, you're basically trying to keep what we call a beginner's mindset, that you're not making any judgments. You're just listening to what their situation is, and then later working out if I can help the person or not.
You use some of the work of Dr. Brad Klontz, right? And he's a fascinating man. I had him on the pod last year and still one of our most popular episodes. He's got so many great insights. One of his areas of research is he looks at people's money beliefs as well. There's 4 main categories he's got. Walk me through some of those money belief categories that he's put out there that you use in your work. How do they pop up in the clients that you see?
Yeah, okay. So there's basically 4 main beliefs that he's identified, because generally someone's usually dominant in one belief, but sometimes it's not always the case. So there's 3 money beliefs that are generally bad for your financial health, and that's money avoidant, money worshipping, money status beliefs, and the fourth one is you're money vigilant. So the difference between all these money beliefs is money avoidant is someone who doesn't like money or thinks people who are rich are greedy, and basically almost deliberately turns away money. Someone who's money avoidant could also be statistically working in some sort of health profession or educator. Then you've got a money worshipper who believes that money brings them happiness, so that they'll basically spend a lot of money just to make themselves happy. Then there's people who with money status beliefs who believe that they've got to show people how successful they are through driving a nice car, house, expensive clothes. They might be spending money that they don't even have just to pretend that they're doing well. And also people with money status beliefs are people who tend to also have gambling issues, be financial enabling and dependent on others. And then people who are money vigilant are people who are very careful about their money, maybe secret about their income, don't tell people how much they earn, watch carefully when they make their bank statements. Yeah, that's sort of the beliefs that I see.
Is there one of those that's better or worse than the others, or does it all come out to play in such individual ways that it's really depends?
For your personal finances, obviously, money vigilance is the best one because you're not spending too much money. You're being careful. Most people in, for example, the accounting profession or a financial advisor would be money vigilant, but also someone who is money vigilant, if they have trauma or something that's happened to them, a significant financial hardship, then there might be someone who's so risk averse that they can't even enjoy their money later in life. So that can also have negative effects down the track. I guess the ones that I see predominantly would be the ones who perhaps maybe have money status beliefs. I've come across several cases like that where they might be earning quite a large income, but spending it all, and gambling issues may come into play there too.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because I know it sounds really glib sometimes, and I get that with a lot of this personal finance stuff. It can sound very glib sometimes if someone's in a different situation and you're listening and you hear these problems people might have, and it sounds silly, but it can be a situation where if you don't learn about money and you don't sort of get a handle on your money mindset and your money beliefs, that people expect a bigger income will help. And yes, of course, more money coming in can help. But if you don't get a handle on those money beliefs, the behaviors, you can spend any amount of money, right? I mean, are there, what sort of levels of income have you seen where people can still get into problems?
Yeah, I mean, you could be earning two or $300,000 and still have tax debt issues. Yeah, so I've just recently onboarded a client where I used the money behaviors assessment and also looking at the client serial ledger and discovered the person had gambling issues. I made went within my network and I contacted the person I already had was giving gambling counseling. This person didn't have funding anymore, so they couldn't help. But my client ended up getting gambling counseling, and now since March they've stopped gambling and now in a position where I've presented the hardship application to IRD and just waiting on basically a decision from the IRD of showing that the person's changed their money behaviors and no longer gambling anymore.
That's amazing. I mean, that's life changing for people, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly gives the person good chance to keep in business if the IRD is prepared to write off the tax debt.
Yeah. How much do you find? I mean, when you're dealing with someone like, the tax department terrifies people, whether it's New Zealand or other countries, or I mean, I think you get these big government departments that are dealing with money and it's scary. How much are they willing to negotiate if someone like yourself comes up and says, look, I've been working with this person. I know they've run up huge debt, but it's been for these very serious reasons and we've made changes. How much are they willing to negotiate?
It depends on who you actually end up getting as a case officer at the IRD. Yeah, it depends on the client's individual circumstances and can I prove that they're going to keep up with their future tax obligations, what their previous tax history was like as well. That comes into play as well. So because it's completely at the IRD's discretion, so I don't have no control over it whatsoever. All I can do is present all the information that I have about the client and be honest and upfront about everything, and then hope that we get a positive outcome. I mean, I have found a case recently where I'm currently working with someone else where the idea is being quite aggressive, and perhaps being a bit unfair too. So having knowledge of other cases and other outcomes and knowing what's fair and what's reasonable is something that you can use to negotiate with.
One of the things that we talked about before we were having this conversation, that we talked about before we switched on the mic, is, the financial sabotage that can show up in other areas of our working lives. You obviously deal a lot with business owners. So there's the idea of, being scared to raise your prices. But also, even if you're an employee, being scared to ask for a pay rise. And I think these are huge issues, right? The amount of money you've got coming in the door makes a huge impact on what you're able to then do with that cash. Why do you think that sort of financial sabotage happens, where people are literally not wanting to ask for what is often market rate for their work?
Right. So I think it's because they have sort of money scarcity beliefs, that they believe that they should be watching every dollar. Yeah, if, for example, they would have asked for their boss for a pay rise, the boss is just going to say no. Well, that's what their perception is anyway. Or if they're unemployed, if they're running their own business and try to raise their prices, they're worried that they might lose customers. So basically, they're coming from a position of fear, that they're afraid of taking action because of fear that's prevented them from either asking for a pay rise or raising their prices. Whereas if you were to take the opposite view and come from what we call a abundance mindset, then you might say, okay, if I'm employed and I'm doing my job really well, then I can either ask for a pay rise and my boss says no. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I can either look for a new job and get paid what I'm worth. Or another option is, if you're a business owner and you raise your prices slightly, maybe your customers are going to stay anyway because perhaps they recognize whatever the goods you're providing are good value. Or if you're providing the service, you probably have a good relationship with your clients and they recognize the work that you do anyway, that the price doesn't really matter to them so much.
Right. So when people are coming from that place of fear, is that hard? Because, you've mentioned the emotions can make it more difficult to tackle these behaviors. If someone's coming from that place of fear, is it harder for them to say, oh, feel the fear and do it anyway?
Hmm. If you're someone who's gone through a period of significant hardship and there's sort of elements of maybe financial trauma there, then that's kind of really difficult to try to have a confidence to raise your prices or ask for a pay rise. That's kind of hard. I think you can perhaps try to do it if you were an employment, for example, you're running your own business, and you're running a service, for example, you can gradually increase your prices, maybe with newer clients first and then existing clients later, once you become more confident doing it.
Interesting that you say it that way, those small steps, and just trying to do it in a small way first, as much as you can. Because it really comes down to, I've seen this around a lot from various sort of psychological tips and tricks, that confidence tends to be something people expect to have confidence first, then they can do the action. And yet, what it seems to be is actually you build confidence by taking the action, that you have to take action in whatever small form you can first, prove to yourself that you can do it, prove to yourself that, that the world doesn't collapse in on you, and then you get the confidence to do more of it and in better, different, bigger ways. Is that what you're saying too with your clients?
That's where I'd be looking at things. Yep.
Life looks different for everyone. Maybe you're buying your first home, growing your whānau, dreaming of travel, or simply trying to stay on top of things. KiwiBank has the tools to help you manage your money your way. Find out more at kiwibank.co.nz. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwi.
I mean, so many of these money beliefs that you mentioned earlier, so many of them are formed in childhood. I mean, a few episodes back, we did a deep dive on that and talked about, so many of our money beliefs are formed by the time we're 8. I mean, does that mean we're stuck with them? Can we change these money beliefs that you've identified?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on where they came about. Like most money beliefs, as I said, come through childhood, through a process we called financial socialization, and generally come from your parents or your grandparents or other relatives.
Yeah.
If they come from a particular event that's particularly emotional, deep, meaningful, and psychological impact on you or a previous generation, then that's going to be something that's going to be really hard to change. But some beliefs maybe they're not so hard to change that you reflect perhaps something your parents said to you that after a while think that maybe they are not right. Like for example, growing up, my parents told me that when I was a teenager, I had to drive a European big car because it was safer and change it every couple of years because I wouldn't get some repair bills. Obviously I don't do that anymore. That's the behavior that's obviously clearly changed.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? I'm such a big believer in so many parts of life. I love my parents, have a great relationship with them, very lucky on that front. But I also really believe that so many of those things that you absorb as a child, they're going in at a very formative age, you pick up on things quite unconsciously and you replicate them quite unconsciously. So I'm a big believer in really trying to think about what things do my parents do that I would like to repeat? What things do they do that I admire, that I would like to continue on? And what things do they do that I think, oh, maybe that didn't give them the easiest life. Maybe that could have been better for them if they didn't behave that way. And maybe I don't want to go down that path as well. And I feel like just by being aware of the fact that you are likely to follow in the footpath of the footprint, sorry, of those who came before you, who raised you, who were formatively around you. I think just by being aware of those things, that can also be pretty powerful, right? Do you see some change come just by people having a spotlight put on their behavior, or does it take more than that?
Yes, you've got to certainly reflect where the beliefs come from over time. If you reflect about what beliefs you've got, it makes it easier to change them. I guess a way to be able to do this because people unconsciously are in a position where they just unconsciously follow the beliefs that they have. They don't think really about where they come from or how it's changed their financial behavior. They don't think like this. So it's not natural for someone to think, oh, these are the behaviors I got from my parents. Are they right? Are they wrong? Can I change my behavior by changing my beliefs? People just don't know this and don't think about this. So naturally, they just follow what they've learned as a child, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and in so many areas of life, right? If someone had had to think about things and thought, okay, I'm not sure this is working out very well for me, and I would like to change this, but I don't know, it feels like a core belief, or I don't know where to start if I do want to change this. What sort of things should they do? Is it, picking up books and learning more about it? Is it working with someone like yourself? Is it talking to other friends, family? How can you start maybe making that shift, making those changes, and taking a bit more control?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're going to identify first of all whether it's a belief or whether it's a money disorder that we're talking about. That's the first difference to understand where it's come about. Yeah. So when we're talking just about beliefs, then I guess a way to look at this to get a better understanding of perhaps your own money story and where your beliefs are coming from. I would say one way to do this is to like play family detective, that you're interviewing your parents and your grandparents and your relatives and finding out what sort of money stories and what beliefs have they got. What beliefs did you pick up from your parents and your grandparents, and why do they believe the way they believe? Once have done this, then you can work out, oh, these are the beliefs that I have. What things can I do? Are they correct? Do I need to follow these beliefs, or should I be changing them?
It's hard having those conversations with those close to you, though, right? So many people are very scared to have open money conversations, even with those they could be closest to. Do you run into that issue?
Yeah, you certainly got to be open minded about it and realize that money beliefs can have a big impact on your financial future.
Have there ever been people you just couldn't help? I mean, you mentioned earlier that sometimes when there's a lot of emotion attached to some of these beliefs. That's a really hard one. So have there been times when you couldn't help people, whether it's for that reason or something else?
Again, it's probably maybe people who are not ready to change their behaviors. Yeah, I got someone that did come to me that his partner at the time wanted him to sort out his tax arrears. He wasn't the one that came to me. Yeah. So obviously he wasn't ready to change his behaviors and he didn't provide me with his information. So it didn't happen because he wasn't ready.
That must be frustrating. What happens to someone like that then? I mean, are they just basically going down a road where eventually they're going to end up facing huge penalties, maybe even jail time? Like, what happens?
Well, the people who haven't filed tax returns for a very long time. I mean, I see people who haven't filed a tax return between 2 and 10 years, for example. I'm speaking to someone at the moment who hasn't filed a return in 8 or 9 years.
That terrifies me.
I mean, that's the sort of mess that I come across. And they might have gone through things in their life, and now they're ready to change their behaviors, and now I've got to sort out the mess.
Okay. So before people get to that stage, are there trigger points to know, look, this money behavior might not be very healthy before you hopefully get way down that road and you have a huge mess that needs a wonderful professional like yourself to clean up? Are there red flags or warning signs of this money behavior isn't very good for me and I should do something about it?
Yeah, there's certain, particularly within the sort of money disorder type area. I mean, things like compulsive buying, gambling, hoarding, financial enabling, financial infidelity, financial enmeshment, financial denial. Those kind of things can impact you significantly.
Talk to me more about those. Are there ones that you see come up more often? And how do we see them sort of playing out in people's lives?
You might have someone who is, for example, money vigilant and very careful with their money, but their partner or spouse might be someone who's, for example, a money worshipper and doesn't earn much money and dependent on the other person to support their money habits. Or, for example, a couple, their spending habits are keeping money secrets from each other. We call financial infidelity. So that's, for example, a wife might be buying clothes or buying gifts for her girlfriends or something and keeping secret from you. That's on a small scale, and the man might be spending money on alcohol or sporting goods and keeping that secret from his spouse. But then we get into more serious issues, like, for example, they've got a secret credit card, secret loan, secret inheritance that they've kept secret from their spouse. And that's obviously extremely damaging not only to their financial health, but also their relationship as well.
Yeah. Something, when you rattled off the list before, things like the compulsive buying as well and the enmeshment and things like that, it struck me that maybe one of the through lines on some of these behaviors is people maybe feeling like they didn't fully have control over their behavior or secret keeping. Are those sort of some red flags that people could keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so obviously compulsive buying is when someone is buying a whole lot of things that they don't really need. They're buying them because they just want to buy something. Other sort of red flags might be financial enmeshment. That's kind of you're sharing inappropriate information with young children and you're sort of psychologically damaging them. They're not able to cope physiologically with some of the information you're sharing. So, for example, if you're trying to get them to make a financial decision for you, yeah, because you can't cope financially, or there's something really high and emotional that you're sharing financial information with them, or you may be using them to keep the debt collector away at the door. That's kind of going to be impacting their financial life later on.
That one makes me really sad. I find it hard talking about money issues in kids because it's such a charged topic in general. But the idea of people putting these burdens onto kids, I mean, it's the flip side of we often talk on this podcast about, it's really great to be open about money with your kids. It's really great to include them in your financial life. But there is a level that goes way too far and you're putting quite adult responsibilities onto their shoulders, adult stresses onto their shoulders. Um, there's a line, right? In terms of you're trying to include kids in the financial knowledge and the financial world, but not maybe giving them adult responsibilities, I think is the line.
Yeah, that would be it. So you might have a situation, for example, of someone who's doesn't speak much English, for example, when they're using their child to interpret financial information.
Interesting. If people are listening to any of this and they've heard us talking red flags and maybe one or two of them have popped up and they've thought, ooh, that's maybe feeling a little close to home or, for me or for someone I care about. And where do you start if you're wanting to DIY getting to a better place with this sort of thing? Are there books that you'd recommend, techniques that you'd recommend? Where do you go?
It depends what the behavior is or disorder it is and what sort of scale we're talking about. Like obviously things like compulsive buying, gambling and hoarding, I would suggest you probably need some sort of professional help. Other things like financial enabling, it depends on who it's with. If it's between you and your spouse and it's really affecting your relationship, then probably you might need to see a marriage counselor to stop that. Yeah, but obviously other behaviors like the financial enmeshment with your sharing inappropriate information with your kids, you might just need to educate yourself about it.
Is there something that you wish more people knew about their money psychology or behaviors? Something that would help a lot of people?
If people were to know about their main beliefs, I think that's really important, particularly if you're in a relationship situation, and understand what your beliefs are and your partner's beliefs are, and how they perhaps could be different, and how this is affecting your relationship. Because I mean, this could save you a lot of arguments and fights with your partner because you can understand where your partner's coming from. And also we can have what we call financial flashpoints in our life that also develop our financial behaviors. So this is basically a really significant major event that's happened in our life. And because of that, we look at particular situation differently.
I'll bet. Okay, financial flashpoints. How would you identify one of those? Would it be again one of those moments where you feel quite a strong emotional pull on that memory?
Yeah, it would be really, really emotional. So a good example of this, I suppose, would be if you're here in Christchurch and your house was damaged in the earthquakes and it took a long time for you to get a payout by the insurance company, then that's going to be a really significant financial flashpoint. You're probably going to think, I'm not going to trust insurance companies ever again. I don't want to get insurance, or you're going to pass this money story on to your future generations, and they're going to probably be uninsured.
Ah, okay. If someone's dealing with a financial flashpoint like that, that's probably quite hard for them to step back from that experience and to say, I had this awful traumatic experience. It isn't necessarily true of every experience, or, I don't need to veer into the financial sabotage of no insurance at all, but maybe I would approach it differently. That's surely really hard for them to step back from. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I guess that is really hard. I mean, obviously, part of it is to recognize that it is a flashpoint. Would be beginning to actually come to terms with it. But yeah, I think that's going to be pretty well stuck to you. It's going to be pretty hard to remove that, behavior or belief from your psychology.
So is there a way that you would deal with that to integrate that in a healthier way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what sort of generation it's coming from. Are you the one that's experienced the belief, or you are further down, a later generation that's had the money story passed to you, that maybe you might be reacting it to the story differently than what your previous generation was.
Okay, what about in terms of, is there an action that many people could take that would lead to them having healthier money habits? Is there something you'd like to see more people doing?
I don't see many people actually keeping track of what they're spending money on a month by month basis. They just look at their bank statements. They don't actually work out what they spend money on and why. I think that's one pretty key thing to do. Yeah, and a business owner, you might look at your spending on your business, but you don't look at their personal spending.
Yeah, that tracking and being willing to look at things. I feel like So much else will flow from that, even subconsciously, when you're willing to first look at and identify what's happening in any problems. I mean, in any sort of area, whether it's looking at, really honestly, what sort of money environment did I grow in and how might that be impacting me now? Or looking at really honestly, what am I spending on? Where is it going? Is that serving me? So many money issues and money changes start with being prepared to look at it square in the face, right? What would be, if there was just one thing people took from this conversation, what do you hope that would be?
Our financial behaviors are shaped by our beliefs and our behaviors. And if someone says to you that you're financial illiterate because you can't follow a budget, you've got to understand that it's going to probably be behavioral issues and not because you don't know about financial, personal finance.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. That's Nick Alcock, tax debt coach and chartered accountant. Now, of course, he's given us so many insights into the financial therapies that he uses in his work, but there's always more to talk about. So, first of all, if this episode has been useful to you, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening and send it to a friend so we can all get better with money together. But also, leave questions and we can also talk about this more in the future. I know money psychology is really helpful to a lot of us. Until next time, have a great day.
Just a note before you go. This podcast can only give you general information about how things work in most cases. It's not individual financial advice. We're all different, so some of this might not apply to your specific situation. Take what works for you, ignore the rest. If you're after individual financial advice, a financial advisor is always the best bet.